Welcome to On the Real. I'm your host, Pastor Adam McCain, and we're coming to you from the beautiful big city of Dallas, Fort Worth. Yeah, great show for you today. I can't wait for you to hear from this great man of God. Pastor Jeremy Donovan is here with us today, rocking it out, and it is going to be just one of the best podcasts that you probably ever heard us put out. Pastor Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Honored.
Minister here in the local area of Dallas, Fort Worth, around the nations. Your ministry goes so far and reaches so deep. And so many people that I know have been touched by your ministry, by you. You're a mentor. You're a father in the faith. Outreach is kind of like the thing that God uses you in so many great ways. And then, of course, just the business side too, man, that God has always kept. You and I always talk about kings and priests.
Right.
Like a kingly anointing along with a priestly anointing, this apostolic thing that you carry, and I'm trying to walk in myself, but it hasn't always been like that. I mean, you've got a great backstory of how God's redemption power. And I just welcome to the show. If you want to share anything about family and friends before you jump in, but I want you to tell your story about God's redemptive power.
Awesome. Yeah, I can do that, and feel free to interrupt anytime if you got questions as I'm rolling. But I just want to shout out my wife, obviously, and my kids. It's as I tell my story, you'll understand it's even a miracle that I have a family. So love them to death, and been married 20 years, and
huge. That's a miracle in this hour.
And it's I'm a Philadelphia kid living in Dallas, so that's a miracle as well. So, but
West Philadelphia.
Yeah. So, but I'll just jump into it.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Philadelphia. I was actually a pastor's kid. I grew up in church.
Wow.
And right about 13, I started to just get a real anger in my life. And I'll explain a little bit later on why I've figured that out. I think sometimes the interesting thing being on the church side as a pastor's kid was people would see me to start acting out. When I was about 13, I was kind of known as the bad pastor's kid, that sort of thing. And everybody always tried to modify my behavior, but nobody ever checked on what the real roots of that behavior was, if that makes sense.
Bro, you dive into that for a second. I know we're going to tell your story, but man, there's so much of that needs to be unpacked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why do we do that?
I don't know. I think, it's an interesting thing, but when we see kids that are acting out, there's so I wrote a book a long time ago, and one of the chapters actually was there's a root to every reason. And that's just so key to understanding when you're dealing with kids that are acting out.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're acting out for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you can get to that root, the behavior will shift. And so, a lot of times you're like, don't do that, quit acting up.
Yeah.
But you don't know why they're acting out.
Yeah.
People act out because
something's going on.
Yeah.
In their
especially
heart,
young
their
people.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't know how to say, I need help. I need attention. I'm not right.
Yeah.
So they act out.
So instead we do behavior modification.
And then we're like, stop it. Don't talk in church. Don't do this. Don't do that. And instead, I would always recommend to youth pastors, hey, if you got a kid that's constantly acting out, the best thing to do is take them aside and say, what's going on in your life that causes you to,
And that's really been a key to your ministry now that you say that. I've watched you do that 1,000 times in a big conference, down at the altar, like, we're done with time. And I'm like, come on, Pastor Jeremy, what you doing? And you're still sitting there looking into the eyes of that young adult and saying, what's going on?
Yeah, it almost sounds weird to say, and I try to find a better way to say it, but honestly, I'd look at people and just say, I don't really care about your issues. I don't care that you've messed up so much.
Yeah.
Where are you bleeding? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
So, and about 13 is really where that started to show in my life. Just super angry kid, and I became angry at the church. Being a pastor's kid, you see so much. And
the behind the scenes of what people really, how they act and treat your family and treat
Absolutely.
the Lord is horrific.
For people listening, please honor your pastor's kids.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing, but it's the one calling you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
It's a calling, and
it is.
You're just
it's a family calling,
and
I told my kids that. I said, listen, this is our family calling.
Yeah.
If we were farmers back in the day, you'd be farming, but this is our calling as a family.
Yeah, and it's hard for a kid. I mean, I remember looking at my dad like, well, I didn't ask for this.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't get to pick this. You might have to be nice to Miss Johnson, but I don't have
why
to be.
Why do I got to smile every time I walk into the church? And why do I got to be there every time
Why
the doors
can't I
are
punch
open?
that kid in the face?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so, probably about 13 is when I started drinking, getting into drugs, that sort of thing, just finding stuff around town. And I was self-medicating. That's what we call it. As I grew as an addict and started getting treatment, I understood that I was self-medicating.
Early teens.
Absolutely.
Just found the kids at school that were running that way and jumped in with them.
Well, and back in the day, I think it's changed a little bit, but, back in the day, there was corner stores that would sell us 40s, that kind of stuff. Even at 13 years old, they didn't care. They just wanted the money, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, you can find the people, and I think it's easier for kids these days, but you can find people that you want to run with.
Yeah,
on either side.
Absolutely.
It's not hard to, and I tell people all the time, like drug addicts, people in that world, they want to share their misery. They're glad to invite you in, like
so well said. They don't want to be alone in it.
They want to share their misery, and they get mad at you when you want to leave it.
Literally don't want to live in hell by themselves. Absolutely. Want to make it a party. Yeah.
And I say that all the time too, is like, I lived hell on earth, and that's why I have the full belief that you can live heaven on earth.
Amen.
Because I chose the way, and that's the hard part about my story is I do have things that I went through that have roots, but right about 13, I started making the decisions for my own hell.
Right.
And I started getting mad at myself because decisions I was making was impacting my life in a negative way, but I didn't know how to make any other decision.
Yeah, right.
And I started to get to the point where people would think, well, he's just a bad kid, whatever. And so I'm like, well, if they're going to think that, I might as well do it.
Yeah, if you're going to brand me that, I'm going to go ahead and own
I'm the
it.
personality. Like, if I'm going to be in trouble, I might as well do something to get in trouble.
All the way.
And so, I started just messing around a little bit. But long story short, 16, 17, kind of the same thing. Right at 17, my parents saw me getting in trouble so much that they decided they were called out of Philadelphia. That's where we lived. And they went and took a church in Alaska. So they tried to move me about as far away from Philadelphia as you could. So my junior year in high school, they moved me up to Anchorage. But
mainly for you.
Yeah.
That was their motivation.
They were like, we're getting you away from, I had a girlfriend at the time they didn't like. And looking back, they had good reason,
sure.
And they knew I was in stuff. So they said, we're moving to Alaska. Dad's called to a church there. They told me, and 3 weeks later, we were on the road to Alaska.
Oh, that only deepened the bitterness.
Yeah. Senior year, it was weird.
Yeah.
But again, I try to teach people now, like, if you don't unpack your luggage, if you don't deal with those roots, you might as well pack up your U-Haul of junk and take it wherever you go. And that's kind of what I did. Within 2 weeks of being in Anchorage, I found all the drug dealers. I was in, same type of situation. My senior in high school was interesting because I was so mad about leaving Philly, leaving this girl that I thought I loved, that I was traveling without their permission, just buying plane tickets and going back to Philadelphia.
You're kidding.
And just to see the girl really and see my old friends. And, I missed that party life. Yeah. So that was when the prodigal really started to happen, where it was just like, I'm done. So stopped going to church. That Christmas when I visited back Philly, I call it home, when I left Anchorage to go back to Philly to visit, that girl that I was seeing, she ended up getting pregnant. And so I was 18 at the time. She called me a couple months after I had been there and said, hey, I'm pregnant, from your visit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man. And so really started messing with my head. And I decided, well, I got to move back to Philly. So I was going to quit school and go back and just try to be a dad to this kid that I had created. And it was the craziest thing. It was actually a security guard. And I also went deep into cocaine and different things as I'm a senior in high school, just going insane, skipping school. It's Alaska. I actually flipped my truck down the mountain 7 times because I was high and just flipped my truck down and couldn't believe I lived through that. But started living in this crack house running away. And I'll never forget the security guard. His name was Jeff. I was a security guard at school. And I was trying to run back to Philadelphia and had a plane ticket, and he knew where I was. He left the school, broke into that crack house I was in.
You're kidding me.
And grabbed me by the shirt and was like, I don't care if I got to drag you across that stage. You're going to graduate high school.
Really?
Yeah, and just a security guard. But
Let's go, Jeff.
He helped me graduate high school because he just gave me enough hope to think, okay, I can still do that. So I did. I graduated high school and immediately bought a plane ticket, though, and went back to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And that's where life really started to get crazy. I was living with my girlfriend at first, but I'm an addict. So all the things that come with addicts come with my life. So she's pregnant. I'm out getting high, cheating on her, like just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. My friends at the time, I really got involved with some bad people. They were owners of nightclubs and different things in the city. So, you know, you're talking 17, 18 years old. I'm already working in the strip clubs, starting to get connections to...
So you got big money coming through your hands then?
Yeah, I'm starting to push some weight. And I had to.
For an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I had to because I had an addiction at that point of about, I don't know, I was probably doing $200, $300, $400 a day of cocaine on my own.
Yeah.
So I had to sell something to survive.
Yeah.
And so, started dealing with these bad people. They were providing me drugs, and I'm selling these drugs in clubs and on the street.
Yeah.
Anywhere I can make money, mainly to sustain my habit. That was the weird thing about it. I made a ton of money selling drugs. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I broke all the time? And it's because
burning through it.
Yeah. There's no idea of, you know, that sort of stewardship, you know, obviously not tithing or anything like that. So, but yeah, I started doing that, just cheating on her. She kicks me out of the house, end up homeless.
Were y'all living with her parents? Did y'all have an apartment?
Yeah. And she's like, you know,
get to the road.
I would show up 3 a.m, high, can't even walk in the house, you know, that kind of stuff. And so she's like, get out of here. She had every right to. And in fact, she's still mad at me to this day. And I tell people she, you know, I pray for forgiveness. Sure. But she had every right to be. I was a bad person. That's what people don't know. Jesus, when I say Jesus changed my life, I'm still not perfect, but compared to what I was,
come on now.
You know, he changed my life. Started just getting really heavy, going out to the clubs, drinking. My son, his name's well, I'll leave that alone. But my son, he was born on my 19th birthday. Wow. So we share a birthday.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy.
365 days of the year, right?
Right, and born on my birthday.
My Jesus.
So he was in my life for about a year. As I'm on drugs and stuff, I start going into mental institutions. You know, they're calling me crazy, which I was. I was. It's weird. Even in my height of addiction, I was still religious.
Really?
Yeah, I remember being in like crack houses in Philly and being
talking about God to everybody.
Yeah, like, man, you need Jesus.
Really?
And they'd be like, you need Jesus too, bro. Like, what are you talking about? You know? Wow. But yeah, I had, and so I wanted to die, but I was afraid of suicide because I didn't want to go to hell. Sure. And so I was slowly killing myself.
And so would you just have these mental breakdowns? Would you have these moments where you were seeing monkeys with red eyes?
Yeah, and there was, you know, I had, you know, there was weird situations where I'd end up in trees trying to hang myself, you know, and looking for that attention. It was, again, me crying out for help.
Were you a violent person when you were on drugs, or were you?
I would say I wasn't violent, but I definitely was in fights and stuff just to protect. I mean, Philly's tough, but I never wanted to hurt people.
You didn't have this deep anger thing that was coming out like that. You was more hurting yourself.
You know, if I took it out on women, I would say that's where the violence mostly came into play. It's not like I'd never hit a woman or anything like that, but
you mean just being manipulative,
and sexual
and everything.
Absolutely, sure, yeah. And I always say that your anointing that God gives you, you can use for good or bad.
Oh boy, that'll preach.
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
So I'm an evangelist.
Sure.
I can sell anything.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, how many women can I get to like me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As the kids would say, I had some riz.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day when I had hair and was slim, but yeah. But anyway, 19 years old. So by about 20, I lost the rights to my son. The government said I wasn't fit to be a father. So I was no longer allowed to see him. He was out of my life, which made me go even crazier. I was actually dating a stripper at the time.
Because he was kind of your only anchor.
He was.
Left, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Forsaking the Lord, forsaking your family.
Absolutely. And looking back, I wasn't a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
I popped in and out, always high. The kid deserved better.
Sure.
And his mom did the right thing by going after my rights. And people are like, man, she should. Like, no, she did the right thing. She was protecting,
well said,
protecting him. And so I hold no anger or hurt for that. There's a point in your life where you go, that's my fault.
Yeah, you have to. Mm-hmm. At some point, you got to mature past. Yeah. Everybody else created your problem.
Yeah.
And say, I made those choices and I hurt people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell people all the time, they're like, man, the devil's attacking me. And I'm like, well, it might be your choices.
Yeah, right. No, exactly right.
I don't know if it is the devil. I think it's decisions that you're making.
So well said.
So anyways, about 21, I'm completely lost, depressed, on drugs, dating this girl that's working in a strip club. I'm working in the strip clubs for really bad people at this point. Scared for my life. Yeah. Because these people, it's almost like.
They don't play.
Yeah. And the devil wants you to know too much. He wants you to have things you got to hide. He wants you to, and he set me up for that really good. I was walking through the mall, went back when malls were a thing. Yeah. And I passed out and fell on the floor. And it was actually a joke, but it's true. I've passed out right in front of Victoria's Secret. People are like, what did he see? Or something. I don't know. But
that's funny.
I woke up. I had vomit all over me. There was a security guard there. He's like, hey, we called the police. The ambulance is on the way. I had a bunch of drugs on me. So I'm like, nah, I'm out. And so I went to my car. I passed out again in my car. And I woke up. I don't know how long I was out. I just know I passed out when it was sunlight. And when I woke up, it was pitch black, and there was vomit all over me again. And I was like, I'm still this day, I'm that guy that's like, I'm not going to the doctor for much, Yeah. But I was like, I think I better go to the hospital. So I drove myself to the hospital, and they said, hey, what's going on? I told them, hey, I've passed out twice today. At this point, my whole left side of my body was numb. It's like I can't feel the left side of my body. They said, are you on drugs? I said, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So they immediately rushed me to a CAT scan. In that CAT scan, I'll never forget, I came out into the waiting room, and I don't think I've ever seen a doctor shocked like this before, but he came in and his eyes were just a look of shock on his face. And he said, I don't know why I'm talking to you right now. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you have what we call a brain aneurysm, and it's a cerebral brain aneurysm. Jeremy. And the interesting part is 1 in 3 people survive from aneurysms, but you're supposed to die instantly when they burst.
You're kidding.
He said, from what we can tell, your aneurysm has burst about 6 hours ago. And he showed me on the CAT scan where there was about a small pancake size full of blood that was smothering my brain. And he said, you should be dead right now. And I don't know why I'm talking to you. And so they immediately rushed me to University of Pennsylvania, which was down the street. Ironically, this is the craziest thing. Back then, they do this surgery everywhere now, but back when this happened, there was only 2 places in the world that did the surgery that I needed.
Let's go. Let's go.
Los Angeles and Philadelphia.
They couldn't have got you to Los Angeles in time.
Mm-hmm. But I was in the right city. Yeah. And I tell people that even when you're, I think I learned this, Jesus taught me this through the situation. I was in my worst. Worst choices, worst rock bottom. Yeah. Jesus still had me in the right place.
My God.
To save my life.
Yeah.
And so the
or
surgery,
hope in a future.
The surgery I needed was a angiogram, is what they call it. Basically, they go through my leg with a microscope up in through my heart into my head, and they took platinum coils to close that part of my brain that was bleeding. If I was anywhere else in the world besides Philadelphia, they would have had to cut my head open, dig through my brain, close it off, and put my brain back together, and I would have been a vegetable. Yep. Because I was in Philly, that's not the case.
My God.
I'm sitting there. They put this paper in front of me with all these horrible odds. I don't remember the exact odds, but it was like, you pretty much have a good chance of dying.
You're 21.
Yeah. You pretty much have a good chance of dying in the surgery. If you don't die in this surgery, we're pretty positive you're going to be paralyzed because I had been bleeding at this point for over 10 hours. And the blood was dripping into my spinal cord. That's not supposed to happen. I was supposed to be paralyzed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I got to sign this? Like,
Yeah.
you're telling me to sign something that's like, I'm like, I don't want to sign this. This is bad. And they're like, it's worse if you don't. We got to put you into surgery. I needed a witness, and that was the craziest thing, was those people that I've been running with, they weren't there.
No, they weren't going to be there.
And I finally found somebody from a church. At that point, I would say one of the only real Christians I knew. He came, and he was my witness, and I remember praying. I said, God, if you let me live through this, I'll live for you for the rest of my life. Signed the paper, went into surgery, and obviously I came out alive.
How many hours of surgery did they do?
It was almost a 12-hour surgery.
Oh, God.
I spent months in the hospital after that because they closed off a part of my brain.
Sure.
So I had to learn how to walk, how to talk.
Really?
Yeah, everything all over again. And I still have platinum in my head. I literally have this huge, I always tell my wife, that's your life insurance policy. You know what I mean? Like, when I die, you get that out.
Don't donate my head, babe. There's stuff in there.
Take that to the pawn shop, girl. That's some platinum in there, you know?
That's hilarious.
So, but yeah, I mean, they tied that part of my brain off. So still to this day, I get severe migraines. I have metal in my head. So if I don't eat properly or don't get the right amount of sleep, that my brain constricts around that metal, and it causes a lot of pain. I'm also peripherally blind.
Okay.
Which I have. I have no peripheral vision. So, you know,
I'll know that if I want to sneak up on you.
Absolutely. My kids think it's hilarious. They throw balls at my head. And, yeah.
Can't see it from the periphery.
But besides that, everything else came back to me.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me out of the hospital after a few months, and within 2 weeks I was back on drugs.
No way, Jim.
Because I hadn't dealt with those roots.
Yeah, man.
Even in my promise to God.
Wow.
I hadn't dealt with those roots. And at that point was when I would say I definitely became certifiably insane. I always looked at God as a dictator. I think a lot of Christians still do, where it's like, you're bad, you're in trouble.
Do's, don'ts.
And I literally thought, I broke my promise to God.
Yes, I'm done.
He's going to kill me.
Yeah, I've committed the unforgivable.
Yeah, he's going to kill me. And so I became super suicidal at that point. You would catch me laying on Broad Street in Philly, like just waiting to get run over. I was walking out in front of buses, all kinds of crazy stuff. Went on this huge binge one weekend where I just took all my money out of the bank. I went to New York.
Thought this is it.
Got high, went crazy, went back to Philly. I knew I had a bunch of after hours clubs there, so I was out till 5 or 6 in the morning, and then I went home. I had about 300 ecstasy pills still in my freezer at my house, and I thought, well, I'm going to take these and finish it because I'm not going to wait for him to kill me. I'm already in hell. I might as well go there. That's kind of the place I was at.
Where you were at. Wow.
So I started popping those pills, and in that little apartment in Philadelphia is what I still think to this day. It's the first time I heard God speak to me as a father. And I just heard him say, "What are you doing?" And I said, "God, and I know it was God. Like, people have asked me before, was it the drugs?" I said, "No, this was God. Drugs don't. Yeah. The devil doesn't talk to you. No. In a healthy manner." He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I've let you down so much. I can't do this. I'm a horrible Christian. Yeah. I'm a really good drug addict. Yeah. I do really good at doing bad things. I'm not good at this Christian thing. Even when I was a kid, I remember I'd go to the altar every week. Yeah. Save me, Yeah. And I said, God, I'm just not good at this. And I've promised you that I was going to live for you. And again, I let you down. And I heard the Lord speak to me, and he said, son, it's not about the promises you make to me. It's about the promise that I made to you. Oh, God. And I still hold on to that to this day, because again, I'm not sitting on this podcast going, I made it. Right. I'm not a perfect person by any chance. But it's not about my promises on what I'm going to do for the Lord. It's about the promise that he made to me.
That's the word of the Lord, bro.
And the promise he made to me is that he sent his son.
That's for all of us, bro.
To die for my sins. Oh, my God. Yeah. And I grasped onto that to that day. Yeah. It was the first time I think I really began to understand grace. And more importantly, in that moment, what I needed was mercy, which is different.
It is.
Yeah. I deserved to be punished, but I needed God's mercy in that moment.
My God.
And so I called that same guy that had signed for me, that guy that I knew that was a Christian, and I just said, hey, I'm in my apartment. I'm trying to kill myself, but I think I heard from the Lord that I'm not supposed to die, that he loves me. I think I heard him say he loves me. and this guy's name's Cal. He was like, yeah, dude, he loves you. What are you talking about, Yeah. And he said, what do you mean you're trying to kill yourself? And I'm like, well, I swallowed a bunch of pills, and it's probably going to kick in soon. So I just want you to know I think I found the Lord. And he goes, did you call the cops? And I said, no, not yet. And so he called 911, and the cops came to my apartment real quick. And actually, when the ambulance got there, they pumped my stomach with charcoal because I had told them I'd taken a bunch of pills. So they pumped my stomach right there, and the charcoal makes you immediately start throwing up. Right. Yeah, and saved my life again.
My God.
So they charged me with being a harm to myself, put me in Norristown Building 50, which is the Philadelphia prison system. It's their mental ward.
Okay.
Spent about 6 months in there in solitary confinement, which is basically a cell that you spend 23 hours a day, and you get an hour out for rec. Or if a religious person were to visit you, he has to be a pastor. So like you could have come and seen me. And there was a pastor that heard my story, and he said, I want to visit this guy. And still at this point, I was starting to fall in love with Jesus again. Yeah. But I still didn't really like Christians.
Sure.
Some days I'm still there now.
True.
It's a bummer to me that the person we're supposed to represent, we don't do very well sometimes. But I said, I don't want to see this guy. But I said, if he brings me a pack of cigarettes, when he comes, I'll visit with him. Okay. And I remember for the first few weeks, he would come visit me, and I would smoke and just blow smoke in his face. We'd sit like this, and every time I remember the smoke would come through, and he'd sit there and he'd go, "Man, Jesus loves you." Yeah, I'm figuring that out, but I don't know if I like you. Yeah. But I really did start to. He gave me a Bible. I'd sit in that cell 23 hours a day, and I can tell you,
I was in prison, and you came and visited me. Golly.
I think I encountered him more there. It sounds crazy to say. Sometimes I wish I could go back to those moments.
Quiet the world.
Because I think it was one of the biggest times I encountered Jesus.
Really?
The closest. He met me in that cell.
6 months of meeting with Jesus.
Yeah. So they let me out. I went to a rehab in actually West Palm Beach, Florida.
What?
Yeah. That was kind of the cool thing. I actually did have health insurance through my parents, and so they were paying for health insurance for me. So the judge was like, hey, we'll let you out, but we need to send you to, you need to go get help for your addiction.
Sure.
You've been in too many mental institutions. This is not helping you. You need to go help. I called the people that I was afraid of. I said, I got to go. And they said, did you say anything? And I said, no, and I never will. I was really good friends with this person's son. And so I think this was a mercy moment for me from God, because this doesn't usually happen with people like this.
Nope.
But he said, all right, if you didn't say anything, you go get yourself better, and I want to see you back in the scene ever again. And that was the last time I've ever talked to that person.
My Jesus.
I got on a plane with handcuffs.
Crazy.
And flew to West Palm Beach, and it was crazy because I had been in this mental institution for 6 months, and I don't know if you know, there's crazy people there. It's just a crazy environment. Yeah, and
I've ministered in and out of those, and
literally
I've seen more people driven more insane.
That's what I told him. I would tell him all the time. I said, I think you're driving me nuts being in here. So you're right.
Yeah, and then to throw the medication on someone who's 100%. Already got, drug issues.
Yep. And just the stories and just the crazy stuff.
The night times have been,
screaming, all of that. I never slept well. So I get to this rehab that's on Singer Island in West Palm Beach. And I'll never forget, I slept so good that first night. I had my own room. There was no screaming, and I was just out. And the next morning I woke up, and there was this huge black guy standing over me. And he said, has anybody told you they love you today?
Shut your face.
I remember waking up and I was like, all right, Lord, if you let me live through this,
This guy.
I'll live for you for the rest of my life. And I said, no, sir. People ask me, are you a fighter? You're from Philly. And I'm like, no, I was a skinny white kid. I'm a good runner.
I'm fast, baby.
I know how to run.
Fast.
I said, no, sir. And he said, well, I love you. Jesus loves you.
Come on, man.
Now get up and make your bed. I said, all right. And so I got up and made my bed. And this happened every day for, I'd say, about 3 weeks. He'd come in my room.
I tell you,
Anybody tell you they love you today? And I'm like, wake up. No, sir. Jesus loves you. I love you.
I'll make you bed.
I'll make your bed. Finally, about 3 weeks, I did get frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight the guy. So I planned my escape route of opening the window and jumping after I yelled at him. But I was like, listen, this is weird, man. Like, I'm tired of you waking me up.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me you love me? Like, this is crazy. You just met me 3 weeks ago. And I said, why are you taking I hate making my bed. Like, why are you telling me to make my bed? This is insane. I don't want to make my bed. I get back in it at night, And he looked at me and he said, I tell you I love you because I do. And the reason I do is because Jesus gave me the capability to, and he loves you more than I ever will. And he said, and I tell you to make your bed because drug addicts don't do anything normal. And I want you to start doing normal things. And that's the first normal thing you can do with your life is make your bed.
Boom.
I'm trying to create habits in you. And I said, okay. And I don't know why, but I believed him. And for the first time in my life, I decided to tell somebody. And I looked at him, and he looks at me, and he says, why are you so angry? I'll never forget that. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're from a good home, man. Like, your parents are sending you money. Like, people in here, they don't get money sent to them.
Yeah.
Like, your parents are sending you money. They're still married. Like, you're a pastor's kid. Like, people are calling to check on you. Like, why are you angry? What's wrong with you? And again, for the first time, I decided to tell somebody. And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm angry because when I was a kid, I would go to Cleveland to visit my grandmother. She owned a bar, a restaurant in Cleveland, and my parents were always inner city pastors, so to be safe on the summers, that's where we'd go to kind of get out for a little bit. When I was there, a family friend from about the age of 17 to 13, where I said I started acting out, he would molest me as a kid. He would sneak into my room and molest me from about 7 till I got big enough to tell him off. And I held that anger in my life for so long.
Yeah.
And then at 13, when I started making decisions to try to cover that anger, made me more angry.
Yeah.
So not only was I angry at him,
Jesus.
I was angry at the church. I was angry at myself. I mean, I had lost the rights to my son. I had this aneurysm that had changed my entire life. I mean, all of these bad choices that made me a person that was just mad at life. I want to use harsher words, but I was ticked off.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, I want to tell you a story about a man named Bartimaeus. And I said, okay. I'm a pastor's kid. I've heard that story.
Not the way he's about to tell it.
And I said, okay. And he said, there's a man named Bartimaeus, and he was a blind man, and Jesus was coming through the town. And the crowd was telling Bartimaeus to be quiet because he was screaming, Son of David, have mercy on me. And if you want to read it, it's in Mark chapter 10. It's an amazing story. People were saying, including the disciples, be quiet, don't bother him. Yeah. And he didn't listen to the crowd. And I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to look at the camera and say, if you're watching this, sometimes you got to ignore the screams of the crowd.
Yeah, so good.
There's moments where you got to go, you know what? I don't care what they're saying about me. I don't care what they're doing, people talked about me. Church people talked about me. I remember church people saying, your calling's over. You've messed up too bad. People love testimonies of drug addicts. I get people all the time, come in and tell me your story about being a drug addict. But how do you tell people you were a failure as a father? And these different things. I mean, it's just, that's not a testimony people want to hear.
No.
But he said, Bartimaeus didn't listen to the crowd. He kept, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And finally, Jesus turns around. You know the story. And he says, come over here. What do you want? And the Bible says that Bartimaeus threw off his cloak and ran to Jesus. And this man in this room told me, he said, a lot of people miss that cloak because the cloak is very important back then.
Mm.
If you're a businessman, you had to wear a certain color cloak.
You're right.
If you were royalty, you had a certain color cloak.
Rabbis.
Excuse me, yeah.
Rabbis, yeah.
And so your cloak meant something, and even if you were a beggar, you actually had to go before a court back then and prove that you were blind or prove that you had the right to beg. And they would give you that color cloak. It was your business permit. Yeah. It was your right to beg.
Wow. I've never heard it put that way, yeah.
And Bartimaeus threw off his right to beg to get to Jesus. And when he threw off that right and got to Jesus, he was healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he could see.
He had to let go of his identity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he had to take the risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you think about it, if there was hustlers like me around, that dude threw off that cloak, it was gone in 10 seconds. Like, you can't throw off a cloak in the hood.
No, sir.
If it's a business permit.
Think about it.
Somebody was already begging right when he threw it off. He had to take the risk. And he looked at me in this moment and he said, Jeremy, you have every right to be angry about what happened to you as a kid. And you have every right to be angry at the church. And you have every right to be angry about your own decisions. But if you would make the decision to throw that right off, to take that right off and run to Jesus.
That's the word.
He's going to heal you.
Yes.
And I sat in that room with him and I began to scream, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And I began to I didn't have a coat on, so I just started screaming, I give up my right to be angry at this man for what he did to me.
Come on, man.
I give up my right to be angry at the church for what they've done to me. I give up my right to be angry at myself for my decisions. And can I tell you, this is a practice that I've had to do over and over again in my life.
So well said.
Because I can't sit here and look at you and say the church has been perfect since.
No.
In ministry, I'd say the church has hurt me more than it ever has as a kid.
Yeah.
And I've had to constantly I throw off my right to be angry. I've not been perfect. I've not been a perfect husband, perfect dad, anything.
Right.
I got to throw off my right still. But when I did that in that moment, it was the first time that root that I talked about in the beginning of this began to be healed.
Yeah. Mercy could come in.
Yeah.
Mercy was knocking at the door the whole time. Grace was knocking, but it couldn't come in.
Because I wasn't fixing where I was bleeding.
Yep. You didn't give him the right.
I promised over and over again, I'm going to be good, but I wasn't fixing where I'm bleeding. And I would say I still fix where I'm bleeding.
Sure.
I've told my testimony thousands of times now in schools, churches, conferences.
Sure.
And I think every time, including this time, I leave with this vulnerability of that 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And I got to go back and go again and go, God.
Right.
People are like, oh, come give your testimony. I'm like, it's not an easy thing.
No.
Jesus heals.
Yeah.
And there are miracles. I know people that are like, man, I was a miracle. I don't even deal with none of that anymore,
Right.
And I see a difference between miracle and healing. And I would say I'm still on the healing process.
Sure. That's gorgeous and beautiful, and it's true and it's honest and it's on the real. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to say to those who engage with us, there are these places that we don't like to talk about, we don't like to preach about, we don't write our books about, but at the end of the day, God has to touch.
Right.
And we have to give him that space. You letting up. So I just can't believe, I don't have too many people in my life that talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember the multiple times in ministry that the Lord said, will you give up your right?
Yeah.
Will you give up your right to forgive them? Will you give up your right so that I can now continue to use you?
Because anybody in life, but I would say definitely in ministry, we can look and go, I got a right to be super mad at them.
Listen, justice.
I got a right to cut them out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially when we're high justice, right?
Absolutely.
And now it's done to me, or it's happened with me, or to the point of forgive myself.
Absolutely.
Because I wasn't Superman.
Yeah.
Because I didn't accomplish what I said.
And I do like to make this clear. People always ask, like, well, you forgave your abuser. And yes, but I always want to be clear. If people are hurting you in your life, forgiveness doesn't mean access again.
Oh, no.
It just means clearing your heart.
That's right.
From the bitterness.
That's right. It means you trust them again. Don't mean you go back in a relationship.
They don't even have to have access to your life again.
No.
I mean, unless God tells you, you got to listen to God in that. But if there's somebody that's hurting you or abusing you, I forgive you, but that doesn't mean you got access.
No, you don't have any access.
Yeah.
The Lord has to work in them too.
Absolutely.
Because they're not trustworthy yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So true. And so, Jeremy, I know the rest of your story. The redemption of this is magnificent. I mean, you alluded to it, but from this moment, do you spend more months in this this Florida place, and it's become discipleship for you? Does it become speaking to that?
Yeah, people always ask, like, how did you get to where you are?
Yeah.
Because this is 20 years ago. I've been just a little over 20 years clean. It's not a long time period when you really look at things. And it was a very late start to life. I was 25 by the time all this is done.
Sure.
So most, like, any of my good friends are done college and in a career, and I'm like stuck in a rehab with a pair of jeans and 2 T-shirts. That's all I had to my whole life.
Yeah.
So it was a very late start. But people are like, how'd you get to where you are? And I still say to this day, Jesus is grace and mercy. Me personally, I think I failed my way all the way to where I am. I've made mistakes.
Falling forward into his grace.
Being a Christian isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back up.
That's right.
That's right. It's about going, okay, I gotta look at my wrongs and get back up and get back to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people miss it. It's like, well, I messed up, I'm done. No, get back up.
That's right.
And look to Jesus. Well, they hurt me, I'm done. No, get back up and
get
back to Jesus.
That's right.
And I've had to do that over and over and over again. But since then, so I was in that rehab for about another 2 months. It was great for me, actually, though. I learned tools and things for my addiction that I never knew on how to fight things. While I'm in there, a guy named Reggie Dabbs, who's one of the only people still in my life that he knew me as an addict.
Wow.
He knew me before an addict. I met Reggie when I was about 11 years old, and he's been in my life ever since. And he's still, I can say to this day, whether I was a pastor's kid, a drug addict, or whatever, every time I ran into him, Jesus loves you, he believes in you. He still this day, he's never quitted me. He's one of the only people in my life. And I know it's sad to say, but I've had tons of leaders, tons of pastors. Reggie's still to this day, one of the only people in my life that has never given up on me. He still texts me weekly, I love you, buddy. I'm praying for you. And I got to give a shout out to him for that, because he's just been solid in my life. And
he's a rock
but he saw me through the whole thing. He was at a church at the time in Florida that had a Bible school. And I was like, I'll go hang with Reggie. He's one of the only people that's ever
believed in me. Yeah.
And so I went and accepted the thing at that school, and I still wasn't ready to be in a Bible school.
Yeah.
I'm still smoking. And,
Yeah.
I remember showing up at the time. I had piercings all on my face, and the pastor was kind of older school church. He's like, "You're gonna have to take them out, boy."
Well, I remember them things around here, boy. That's the devil.
So,
that's Satan worship.
Yeah, so I had to take out all my piercings and hide my tattoos and all those kind of things. But it was okay. But I went about 8 months in that program, and they ended up kicking me out. The director of that program since has been like, hey, we just didn't know how to deal with addicts. And I'm like, I didn't know how to deal with y'all, so it's good.
Yeah.
But, so I got kicked out of Bible college. I finished it. I finished it online,
That's
I finished my schooling online and stuff, and moved to Oklahoma, met my wife, just got into ministry, and started doing church. While I was doing church, I started stepping into business, doing different things. Interesting part of my story. Again, I failed it my whole way here. About 4 years into ministry, just to fast track this, I went from strip clubs, drug addict, to 2.5 years later, youth pastor. So I was still a hot mess. I still am, but back then it was like,
who's been forgiven much loveth much. And
right.
That's the point, right?
Yeah, I love people. I do.
If we just turn people loose who love much, God works all those other pieces out. Yeah.
And I do love people.
Yeah,
I can even say, looking back at my ministry, I've hurt people, and it's still to this day. And as you're practicing being a leader,
right.
I always tell people, people are like, how are you a good leader? I'm like, because I messed up so many people trying to get this right, because when I first came into it, I was super religious, you know what I mean? And I've had to learn.
To be to get your stability.
Yeah, I had to be for myself.
You had to be. You're like, I can never drink that. I can never go there. I can never do.
Yeah.
You should never do that, right?
And so I'm dealing with all this junk still.
Yeah.
And really, the only person seeing it is my wife.
Oh, bless her.
And then I'm going to this church where I'm a youth pastor, like, hey, I'm Pastor Jeremy, blah, blah, blah. And she came home to me one day, and she's like, you are so fake, and I married you because you were one of the realest people I met, and you're a fake. And if you know my wife, it was in love.
Yeah, you're right.
But she was like, I'm leaving until you figure this out, figure out who you are, because you're not acting the same at home. And I'm not a mean guy. Like I said, I love people, but it was just like lust issues, still addiction issues, still to this day fight a food. If you're an addict, you're an addict. I fight a food addiction constantly. And so when she left, I went to my pastor at the time. I was like, hey, I think I'm having marital problems. Like, we've only been married for a year, but she walked out. Yeah, I've never been through this before, but I think technically she's living with her dad right now.
Help.
So, yeah. And he was like, well, we can't put up with that here. And he let me go.
Oh, wow.
And so when he let me go, I actually went into the business world. And that was kind of the first access to me going, wait a minute, I have a gift in business as well. I met a guy that is an entrepreneur. He owns like 30 different companies. And I moved up really quickly in his company, became the chief of marketing. This was all within like 3 or 4 months. And I learned so much in business from him and a couple other guys. And I was like, wow, I really like business. This is fun, you know. I'm trying to make this quick. But while I'm doing that, I started attending this church and running into people I know. And this is about 2 years after getting fired. And people are going, he used to be a youth pastor, and he was really good. He grew a youth group of like 500 people. And so the pastor starts talking to me, and he's like, I'd like for you to be my youth pastor. And I'm like, nah, bro, like I'm in business now. I'm enjoying it. I just want to attend your church. I don't want nothing to do with ministry. And so he's like, well, let me take you to lunch. And so he took me to lunch. And I literally went to that lunch like, I'm going to tell this dude so much wrong with me.
Yep. There's no way.
Yeah. And so I was like, listen, here's why I was a good youth pastor, but
let me tell you what I did.
I'm an addict.
Yeah.
I don't, my son and, that I lost rights to. My wife left me while I was a youth pastor. You don't want nothing to do with me. And he looked at me and he started crying and he was like, I think you're the perfect guy for the job.
You're kidding.
And I was like, man. So then I went back to my boss and I'm doing it. He's like, hey, I was about to promote you over our manufacturing company in China. You're going to make all this money. And I said, no, I think I'm supposed to go back into ministry. And he started crying, and he's like, I chose money over ministry. You're doing the right thing.
Jesus.
Wow. And so I did. I went back into ministry. Long story short, pastored there in Oklahoma for a little while, came to Texas.
Yeah. That's where we met.
We met you, and we've been doing it ever since. Now I'm at a church here. Yeah. But I've since then learned that my gift in business, it was weird. The whole time I'm doing ministry again, I'm like, gosh, I kind of missed the business stuff.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm a business owner. I own 2 businesses. Yeah. I also work for a corporation helping them. Yeah. And I do all our
churches and ministry,
community outreach. And then I consult churches as well for outreach and stuff. So
unbelievable.
Yeah. So now I got my hands on all kinds of stuff, and God's good. And I no longer have a pair of jeans and 2 T-shirts. In the last 20 years, God has definitely blessed my family. One of my businesses is just doing great, and you eat there all the time, so thanks for helping.
Well, and then I brought you in to just even teach our staff, because we want to be multi-streams for our staff, and so that God has multiple ways to bless our people.
The Garden of Eden had 4 streams.
Thank you.
So I think it's biblical.
Yeah. Abraham was rich in gold, cattle, and silver. He had 3 streams.
And I just firmly believe now, I think one of the things I grew up with that I regret taking as good advice was you've made it when you become a full-time pastor.
Yeah, crazy.
I think that's untrue.
It is.
Yeah.
So amen.
That's my soapbox on that.
Listen, as we wrap this time up, would you, I felt such the word of the Lord on this redemption piece. But really, I really believe there are people listening. There are people who have friends that need to hear your story. The hopelessness, and then the giving up the rights.
Yeah.
When you did that, that's when the miracle happened for you. When you could embrace the Lord. Would you pray into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Speak into that for the last closing moments.
I just want to say, if you're watching, even when you think there's no hope, Jesus still believes in you.
There you go.
And that's something I've had to learn. People might quit on you. People might not believe in you. You need to know who Jesus thinks you are.
Amen.
Because life isn't easy. And I'm not sitting here saying when you become a Christian, it's going to be easy. People are still going to let you down. Some of you might give your life to Jesus today, and nobody's going to believe you. Yeah. I still go home, and people are like, wait, what are you doing? You're a pastor? Do you know who you were?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The other great thing I learned about Jesus is I didn't become a better person. I became a new person.
There you go.
And sometimes that old person still tries to come back in, and I have to look at him and go, no, that's not me anymore. Christianity is not behavior modification. If it was, we'd all just go get counseling and get better.
Right.
Jesus makes you new.
Yeah.
And Jesus wants to make you new today. And if you're hurting because somebody else hurt you, or maybe you hurt yourself, Jesus believes in you, and maybe it'll be a miracle. I pray it is. But you might just go into a healing process like I'm in. I don't ever want to I don't want to be a minister that's like, I'm on this pedestal and I've made it. Man, I'm still in the process.
Yeah, it's good, Jeremy. Thank you, God.
And I'm grateful I'm in the process because it allows me to continue to see Jesus.
Yeah.
And I can still to this day go, wow, I'm not perfect, but Jesus loves me.
Oh, so good.
So I just want to pray for you.
Yeah, come on.
But if I could finish with anything, don't remember my story. Remember the love of Jesus. Because I don't deserve to be loved. I don't deserve to be sitting here. I don't deserve anything. But Jesus loves me. He loves you too. Heavenly Father, I pray for anyone that's watching this right now. If they're hurting, if maybe they got a right to be hurt. They got a right to be upset at their parents. They got a right to be upset at themselves. They got a right to be upset at the church. Gosh, there's so many young people mad at the church right now. And I'm with you. I got a right to be mad at the church. But God, we give up that right now. In the name of Jesus. And we say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I need mercy. I love your grace, but I need mercy. So God, please, I pray for anybody watching this, that you will begin to heal their heart as you healed Bartimaeus on that day. And God, you'll begin to heal their life and give them direction, whether it's business, ministry, or both. Give them the direction they need to. And God, I pray that when they fall, they'll get back up. I pray that you'll give them the endurance. God, this is not a quick sprint. Give us the endurance to keep getting back up.
Yeah.
And God, we might get to heaven bloody and bruised.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how we show up, because it says you've clothed us in your righteousness. So no matter how we look, we always look as good and as holy as you. And I thank you for that, Jesus. I thank you for clothing us in your righteousness. And I just pray right now, healing.
Yeah.
Somebody watching feels like you've been removed from the process of Jesus because you were reaching some goal. Get rid of the goal.
Yeah.
And get back in the process. That's what I'll finish.
Lord, bro. Let it be so, Lord. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, bro. It's powerful. Come on. Well,
it's an honor. You've been a hero. Before I knew you, you were a hero from afar. So it's an honor to be at this table with you. I love you.
I love you more. You heard it here on The Real. Pastor Jeremy Donovan.